college football nerds. Going to do a quick discussion of Iowa and Michigan. We saw something in the data that was a little interesting, so we wanted to discuss it. Also, how it lines up with Vegas. We've already done a couple previews this week and our top 10, so we didn't have a ton of time to devote to this. But we wanted to give you guys some love since we did have the data already at our fingertips, and it's, computer model season. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh and let him tell y'all what the data says, and maybe we'll draw some conclusions after that.
So we run this model to sort of give ourselves a neutral baseline of where the teams are every week. And we ran a model in Iowa and Michigan just out of curiosity, and we thought it was kind of interesting. So 30-second spiel if you haven't seen our channel and know how it operates. Our model looks at per play statistics, so like yard per carry, yard per attempt. And it builds a picture of your team, offensively and defensively. And then what we do is we put the numbers in the model and we let the model generate its own scoring model unique to each team. It's not just like a points per yard situation. What it's looking at is, how many points could you generate in different scenarios? Looking at your past this season specifically, it tries to figure out, what does your team score and what does your team allow, depending on, what you're able to do in the game and what your opponent does. And it just kind of an interesting neutral baseline without our hand being in it too much. And what it does is it generally gives us an expectation of, based off what these two teams have done in the past, if they both show up playing their B+ game, what does it look like? The interesting thing here is the B+ game has Iowa over Michigan 26-22, but it's close. And I think it's interesting how much of a mirror image these teams are of each other. Iowa is allowing 98% of opponent rush averages, not 82% of opponent passing averages. Now, when we talk about passing averages, this is a percentage allowed statistic. So if your opponent's average 8 yards per carry, you allow 6, it's 75%. Michigan's at 94% and 83%. So right at the same pass defense level, slightly better run defense. I think personally the most interesting thing here, Iowa's run defense is not particularly good. 98% is not a high number. When you look at Iowa's opponents, Miami, Rutgers, Iowa State, Middle Tennessee State, not great opponents. They haven't really been able to prove themselves. Iowa had a close game against Iowa State. They probably maybe sort of kind of should have lost that game if Iowa State's just able to field a punt. Meanwhile, Michigan's being kicked down the road because they get destroyed by Wisconsin. I think there's a real argument in this game that Iowa being ranked and Michigan being the underdog, Michigan has a real shot to win it. Michigan has their problems, but they and Iowa are mirror images. I think by and large, Michigan's more talented than Iowa across the board. Michigan's skill players, particularly the receivers, are a lot more talented than what Iowa has right now. I think Stanley is it's kind of funny how Stanley and Patterson are like mirror images of each other from alternate realities, where if you took Stanley and you combined him with Patterson, you'd kind of have an ideal quarterback. Stanley manages the game well, but he doesn't have a great arm. He's not a super fast athlete. Patterson is a guy that has the speed and arm talent to run a lot of things, but he doesn't necessarily have the size and he doesn't have the decision-making to run the offense the way he should have. We've been critical of Michigan a lot ourselves because, as we pointed out, Michigan goes out and hires a guy that's never called plays in Gaddis. We were very critical of it in the offseason. We thought Michigan was going to be a very good team, but we were really, really skeptical of it. Everybody sort of said, well, you don't need to worry. Gaddis is a great guy. Harbaugh's going to give him full control of the offense. I think now at least people, I'm sure, have a lot more respect for our viewpoint in that. And a lot of our concern with Gaddis knowing his past history on how he was going to be able to translate. Right now our model is saying Iowa should win this game. But it's really a field goal difference. I mean, I say 26-22, but when you get the decimal points, it's even more close to 3 points. These are close teams, and Iowa may be ranked, but it will not shock me at all if Michigan does win this game. It's going to be interesting to see the perception shift that happens if that does occur. It's also going to be interesting to me to see if Michigan can start playing up to their potential. But the big thing here that I wanted to get across with running the model is Michigan, for all their faults and all their struggles offensively and their struggles defensively against Wisconsin, our model doesn't care or know what Michigan was supposed to be. We don't use last season's data. And in a lot of ways, it would make it more accurate from a betting sense. We're not using this as a pure betting model. We're using it as a discussion point. And the whole reason is the Michigan that we've seen this year, with all their faults, is really only a field goal worse than what Iowa's put out on the field when you account for the level of competition between the two teams. Michigan has a real chance to be able to win this game. I don't think Michigan necessarily will win this game, though I'm actually fairly, I probably hedge a little bit towards Michigan. But I just thought it would be an interesting model point without even making a projection. Iowa 26, Michigan 22.
And it's also interesting because the point spread in this game has Michigan favored by 5.5. It's notable because they both play Middle Tennessee State. Middle Tennessee State sort of gives Michigan a game 40-21. Iowa blows them out of the water. A lot of people probably wonder where this 5.5 line comes from Michigan. What we're basically saying is our model sees all that data and still doesn't think that Iowa should be favored by a ton. Vegas probably is looking at that or seeing something similar and saying, even that number is more that Michigan's just played below their average potential more than Iowa has to this point. And if Michigan starts playing up to their potential, they really ought to be favored in this game, and in fact are from Vegas.
Yeah, and there's other common data points like Rutgers. Michigan handled Rutgers better. Iowa struggled with Iowa State. Rivalry game, whatever. Iowa State's not that good, so 18-17 scary. I do think Michigan's defense matches up better with this style of offense. You didn't make a prediction. I will. I actually think Michigan wins this outright, something ugly like 17-13. But these are fun. We don't do a lot of these model-only games where we don't have time to do a full-blown prediction, but the data is interesting on this one, so we wanted to give it its due. So that's it. Iowa versus Michigan. Let us know in the comments what you think the score is going to be. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week, and God bless.